Hello, Lizzie here, and today I'm going to show you how to make Marcy. Now, Marcy is actually just the block. I happen to have made it up into a cushion, which I'm going to take you through anyway, but in a totally different colourway. You can see I'm surrounded by pinks, so it's going to be like pinky colours, just so it's different. But I thought this looked really Hawaiian, sort of really bright, zesty, zingy colours, which is something we can always do with in our lives. So Marcy is a foundation paper piece little block. When she's stitched in, she's measuring 6 inches, 6.5 inches when she's not stitched in. And of course you could make multiples of these and create a quilt if you wanted to. I just decided that to stop at 4, time permitting. I had time to do the 4 and then back it and make it into a cushion. And you can see I've brought out the oranges and yellows around as a border. So I do like to put my cushions together with a border around, like you would a quilt, because I think it brings all the colours together. So Marcy is a download on my website. You'll see her there we go. And she's what I would call a 2-star rating, because although foundation paper piecing is actually a little bit of my nemesis, I've never really got my brain around it at all. I've just about mastered it for this cushion, and it was something that I needed to challenge myself with, and I'd like to think I'm challenging you as well. It isn't difficult. You just got to be methodical, and because my brain is a little bit airy-fairy, methodical doesn't come into it very often. So it could be a challenge to you, which isn't no bad thing, but I'm going to take you through 2 different ways of doing foundation paper piecing. If you were to look this up on YouTube, the internet, wherever, you'll find people find their own way of doing it, although there are, I suppose, traditional ways as well. So we're kind of touching base on all of that. But the first technique I'm going to show you is how I like to put it together that makes sense to me. And then I'll show you another way that works for other people. Anyway, Marcy is a download on my website, which is lizziecurtis.com, and I hope you enjoy making Marcy. So, how do we start? So let's just put this down for you. Put it down there. There we go. Make sure it doesn't fall. So you get the full pattern pieces. So in the instructions, etc., you'll get the pattern piece, which looks something like that. And hopefully you can see that okay. So it's made up of multiple parts. Now, in the second option today that I'm going to show you, I've decided to make that little centre part there as 1 square. But in the first one I'm going to show you, it is the 2 triangles. We don't want to confuse anybody, let alone ourselves. So this is what it will look like when you print it out. Now, what I would like you to do is to cut it down. So you're going to cut it down to that sort of size. Now the dashed line, which is around the outside edge, that is what would be the raw edge. That's what you're cutting down to. When you square up at the end, you're cutting on the dashed line. Okay, I've just happened to, it almost looks like you should be cutting to here, but you're not. You're cutting to that dashed line. And all of your pieces within this block here, for instance, this outside piece here, they should all go over that dashed line. They should, in some instances, go past, use scraps up and go past those lines, and then you can trim back. It is a good way of using scraps, but those scraps have really got to be big enough to be able to cover that area and some besides. And as we go through this, you'll understand what I mean. It's no good cutting that shape with a 1/4 inch seam allowance on the outside. Yes, okay, if you're really super clever, it may well work, but please, none of us are that super clever some of the time. So at least cut these pieces 1/2 inch bigger, but I will talk to you about this as we go through. So that's what I suggest you cut down to. So you need one of these to write your, and this is slightly bigger here, you need one of these, I'm going to show you the side camera. You need one of these where you're writing down the fabric. So for instance, we've got cream here, cream, 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 and I know I need 4 pieces that are going to have the cream pieces added to the project. Dark green, medium green, light green, etc., 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 orange and yellow. So you can see straight away that I've got a plan. I've got something I can refer to. When you've made up one block, obviously you've got that to refer to as well. But I suggest strongly that you do this because then you've got a definite reference guide for what fabrics you're going to use. It's just you remembering which one is the dark green, which one is the medium green, things like that. Okay, so in this first technique I'm going to show you, what I want you to do is to take all your pieces, so take this piece here, let's say for instance, and you're going to cut that apart, okay? So all of these are going to be like a jigsaw puzzle. So for instance, number 4, I'd cut down that line and across here. Number 3, I'd cut down that line and up here, right off the edge. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. So this is the number 4. So if we get it right to the pattern, you can see that's the number 4. So you can see where I've cut right out. There's my dash line. I've cut beyond that, and you can see how big my fabric pieces are. I've actually used all of these little jigsaw pieces as a template, if you like. So I've used each one to cut out each piece. If it's slightly shaped, I've still cut out you know, a square. Some things will change. For instance, for the cream, I've cut out a really really good supersized triangle there, and I've used these pieces of fabric to cut my pattern pieces out. Okay, so I don't know whether you would say that was wasteful or not. Certainly if you see the second technique, you may think that's more wasteful with your fabric, but you do need these pieces to be at least ½ an inch bigger than your pattern piece. Okay, it is quite important. So yeah, let's just leave it at that. I seem to have 2 pieces of that, so we'll not worry about it. So I've got my cream pieces in one piece. Oh, I remember now I was going to do 2 blocks, but anyway, I'm going to do one. There's my mid green, so I'm going to pop it there. My light green, and we've got a couple of different shapes for the light green, and you can see some of them are not quite right, but we're supposed to be using scraps. So my light greens are here, and I'll keep them together on a heap. Oh, there's some more cream bits here, so I've probably duplicated some of these, but that's okay. I've got plenty, which is the main thing. My yellow, so I've got a couple of pieces there ready to stitch, so we'll pop that just there. My orange, and you can see how much bigger I've cut them there. Dark green, let's turn that around so it's the right way for you to see. Dark green there, okay, and then the other dark green piece there. Okay, so you get the idea of this particular technique. And before you even say, oh, that's not the way I've been taught, that's fine, because we've all been taught differently. And the second technique that I'm going to show you might just be the one that you've been taught. So hang in there. So let's get our map so we know exactly what we're doing. So I'm going to keep that in front of me, and I'll get rid of all these little bits and bobs so they don't confuse anybody. Let's put those to one side. So this is now the pattern piece. Now you'll need 4 of these pieces of copy paper with this printed on to make the 4 blocks. So you'll need 1 printed out for your pattern, so your guide, your reference guide, your map. You'll need to print another one to cut up, in this instance, with these pieces. And then you'll need 4 to make the 4 blocks. So each one of these will be used and abused, stitched through and then torn away. So we're going to make this block now, okay? And like I said, we're going to do it the way that I like to do it, first of all, which I find most logical to me, and then we'll do the other one. So I know that number 1 is orange, and I know number 2 is yellow, and I'm going to stitch those together. So we're going to stitch from this side. I want my sewing machine needle to follow the line across there absolutely brilliantly. You might be tempted, and let me get the pieces ready. Let's get them like this and get those spare ones out of the way. So we know that the orange one goes on number 1 and the yellow is number 2. I will just check again just to make sure. Yellow is number 2. So they're gonna look something like that. But we want to put right sides together, and we want to stitch along this diagonal line. So first of all, we'll do right sides together. And if you've got straight edges, that's fine. You've got a fighting chance to start off with. But don't be tempted to put it on there like that and stitch there. You've no idea where that black line is. You really haven't. If you've got a light box, then you might be able to see through, but you can't stitch with it on a light box. So we have to flip this over to the other side. So we have to put our fabrics on this side. Now you can't see a thing. Even if I hold this up to the light, I doubt very much whether you'll see anything. Now, you could, if you wanted to, print on parchment paper, because obviously then you'll see both sides. You could put this on a light box, and then you'll be able to see right through this paper and test it out, test me out by doing that. But I know that my orange goes on the front of the front of the paper on the right side facing up. So if you're using pattern fabric, it's really important to know that it's the first piece is right side up. So if this was patterned, this is right side facing me, this will be right side down. So the two pieces are right sides together. So now you can stitch along that line. So once again, let's do it. So we're going to cover it like that. And this is where, this is why I have difficulty with this, because my brain has real troubles remembering the sequence of how we do this. But we know that we want the orange down first and the yellow on top, because the yellow is the one that's nearest to the corner. So it's 1 here, which is orange, 2 there is yellow. And we can, like I say, you can get a light box, put that behind, and to see if your fabrics are lined up, or you can bend this fabric back on the line. Again, we'll cover that in the second part, and know that you've got those fabrics overhanging that line. Okay, so let me stitch this. Now I want you to turn your stitch length down to about 1.5, perhaps even 1.25, and you're going to stitch just before the start of that line. So if I was to get a pokey tool, you're going to start stitching about here, okay, and you're going to finish stitching just about here. Okay, when you stitch these outside ones, so this line here for instance, you're going to take it off the paper, basically. You're going to take it off the paper. But these ones you're going to stitch, start stitching at least 1 or 2 stitches before that line. So let's put it under the machine. Like I say, I do not like having those pins there, so I think this will be the only time that I'll use a pin. So you're stitching on the right side of your paper. So let's get going on that. Okay, so hopefully you can see that I've stitched, well, it's lovely, it's really clear, isn't it? I've stitched the line between the 1 and the 2. The third one I'm going to do is between the 2 and the 3, so I'll be stitching across that line there. Okay, but anyway, let's have a look at it from this side. So when we look at it from that side, I want you to try and get in there. You can see where my line of stitching is. Okay, so from this side, we've no idea. From this side, I know exactly that I've gone on that line. And on this side, you can see, I'm not sure. But we need to trim this back. So on that stitch line there, it's now very, very easy to fold that back. Okay, so you can fold it back because it's perforated. So you can fold the paper back, and you've got your fabrics overhanging, and straight away you can see that you've got plenty of fabric there. So now's the time to sort of trim this back. So these rulers are very useful. They're called add a quarter, and they have a lip just here. That lip sort of hangs off your paper, and it's sort of, I don't know if you can catch it, but it's got that lip. There we go. And this is perfect, obviously, for foundation paper piecing, because, and I'm going to try and do it so you can see, that quarter inch 1/4 inch sits against that paper. Can you see the darker pink line running through there? If I bring that back, you can see that that is your 1/4 inch. So it's quite handy, And then we're going to trim that away. So get my rotary cutter and we're just going to trim. Okay, there we go, lovely. So there's our first trimmed piece. And then we're going to push that paper back, flip it over, and then we're just going to finger press, or you can get your iron, which, you know, I do love to use my iron, so I'm going to switch it on. And the only trouble with plain fabrics now is I've got a couple of dints where my pins were, but you can see that with an iron they'll come out. So I'm going to avoid using pins from now on. So now we need to place the other pieces on here. And as long as we've covered that seam with our other pieces, then we'll be fine. You might find that you're slightly under or perhaps a lot over, but as long as you can stitch these seams together, you'll be absolutely fine. So we're going to stitch number 3 next. So again, you could fold this paper back to make sure that you've got enough fabric underneath, and I know I have. So let's just quickly get my iron in and give that a little press, because I much prefer to do that as I go. And we're going to now stitch number 3. So number 3 is here. So we're going to get the piece that marries up to that. So let's get that. Oops, all my lovely heap of fabrics. And I know this is plenty big enough. So we know that it's going to be stitched sort of like that, and you can almost see through that, but of course we want it on the other side. So I'm just going to take it to the back. And I know I've got plenty of fabric, so I know that's going to cover it. And again, pin those layers together. And of course it is right sides together, so that's going to flip over that way. Okay. And of course this image will be the mirror image of the design. So you can pin this together, but I'm just going to hold it, put it straight under my sewing machine, start a couple of stitches from the end, and I'm stitching between 2 and 3. So let me show you on the camera. So I've stitched from there across to there, and you can see I've done 1 or 2 stitches further than the line. Okay, so I've stitched across there. So again, you can now, because we've perforated it, we can bend that back really easily, like that. There's all my fabrics. I'm going to use my 1/4 inch ruler again, just hang that off the paper there. I've got a nice fold and I can cut. So I'm going to turn it so I can cut it for me a bit more easily. There we go. So there is my beautifully cut 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you can get instead of add a 1/4, you can add an 1/8, and some people like to just have an 1/8 of an inch here, and that's going to be down to you. So fold it back so it's nice and flat. Take it over to the front, because this is now your front, and finger press it or iron it, and that's your 3rd piece done. So again, we'll just bring the iron in, and like I say, I do like to use my iron to hold it down, but a finger press or a fabric roller, if I can find it in my drawer quickly enough, I'll show you my fabric roller. So the next one we're going to do is number 4. So number 4 is the seam line between 3 and 4 here. So it's this line here, this line here. So we just need to find the corresponding piece. It'd been good if I'd had these in order, but I haven't. So you can see again, it's a nice big piece. So it really, I must admit, it really helps if you cut them a good 1/2 inch bigger than what you need. So we know it's going to go around about there. So all I do is pop it on the back in roughly the same sort of place. And if I just line that up, again with a light box, you'd be able to see all the way through. You'd be able to see your fabric back and front. Again, if you want to, pop a pin in there just to hold that in place, but you will get used to handling this. It's not nearly as frightening as you might imagine. And like I said, and I'm really honest with you all, and that's the other thing, look, you can see what I'm doing here. I'm lifting this up and I'm making sure my fabric is where I want it to be. I'm making sure that I've got a good 1/4 inch clearance here, or more, certainly more. And like I say, this is something that I kind of avoid because I'm not comfortable with it, but I'm doing this especially for you. Okay, so look, we've stitched along that line there. Let me just try and get that in so you can see the perforation. So we've stitched between 3 and 4, and we've stitched across here. Okay, so again, fold that paper back. It's perforated, so it makes it really easy to fold it back. And there's our scrap fabric underneath. We're going to trim it. Once you get this under your belt, once you get to grips with it, you'll sail through these. You'll make them up in, I don't know, half an hour. But while you're learning, to go slowly and concentrate on the technique. So fold the paper back so it's nice and flat again. Flip this over, and that is our piece number 4. And the thing about foundation paper piecing is that you get real accuracy. It's incredible how accurate you can be. And if you look at some foundation paper piecing patterns, they are incredibly intricate. And that's where the 1/8 of an inch ruler is probably more beneficial. Okay, so let's look at the front again. So number 5 is this piece here. And I know from my little map, which I have over there, it's cream. Oh, sorry, no, it's light green. It's light green. I'm jumping ahead because I know 6 is green. So number 5 is light green. So let's get that piece out and ready. So there's my light green piece. So you can see that that's how it fits. That's how it fits. But we're going to stitch. Although this is number 4 and that's number 5, we're going to stitch along this line here. We're going to join all those pieces together. And if you look at it from the front, it's quite logical that the next seam would be here or here, but we've numbered it, so that is number 5 there. So if I was to line that up and sort of flip it to the back, like that, you can't see it, I can't see it, but that's the line I want to stitch. If I flip that over, keep my fingers there and get that lined up, I know that that's going to stitch along here. And of course you could pin this all so it all stays together. You can sort of have a little peek and see if that overhangs. I mean, it overhangs by 1/2 an inch. So there's lots of different ways you can check. In the next technique, we're going to fold here and you see the lines quite clearly, or the fabrics quite clearly. So let's stitch that. So a quick reminder that your stitch length is 1.5, and you know, so because it's good for tearing the paper away afterwards. I'm going to check the bottom of this just to make sure I've got plenty of fabric at the bottom, because I've certainly got a lot at the top. So I'm just going to move it down slightly, not much. And I'm going to start stitching just before, you can see, just before my dashed line. It's just before, and I'm coming down my fabric there. Again, I'm bringing my pattern piece up just to check and make sure that in my line of stitching, all of that fabric is where I want it to be. So now I'm coming down 5. Break my thread. So I've stitched that piece along there now. So we just stitched 4, we're jumping over here to 5, and it's the lines between 3 and 1 really, and that's what we've stitched. Okay, again, this is perforated, so really easy to fold back. And if you started your stitching like I did just before the pattern piece guide, you'll have 1 or 2 stitches that you can tear back, but you're tearing the paper, not the fabric or the stitches, you're tearing the paper back a bit. But that's the perfect perforated edge to fold back. Again, we're putting our ruler over the top and we're cutting. So we'll continue all the way now. So flatten the paper out, take your piece over and give it a little press. And like I say, as you do these, you'll get quicker and quicker and quicker. But you don't want to do them too quickly, you don't want to make a mistake. So there's number 5 down. So that's number 5 is the green. Now we're going to do the cream, which is number 6. So let's get, I think that's the right piece that I need. So again, you can have a look at it from the front to make sure it's going to fit over. You can see it can. And then I take that piece and I flip it over to the back. Like that. And I know that my cream fabric is easily clearing that line. And the line I'm going to stitch is between there and there. So let's just pop it under the needle. And I'm stitching from the dashed line. Okay, so I've stitched across here. I'm going to fold it back, pull the paper and tear the paper. If your stitches have gone over, which they will, because that's what I've asked you to do, but you're tearing the paper, not the fabric or the stitches. Again, 1/4 inch ruler, cut. So can you see how we're building up? Flatten that out, go to the front again, and we're going to iron that. And just make sure, and I don't know if we're quite going to be all right there, just make sure that your raw edges, just like here for instance, are covering the dash line. And I think, you know what, we're just going to be a whisker in from that. Don't forget also, you see, although we're cutting on the dash line, the 1/4 inch seam allowance is here. So that's where I'll be stitching. So as long as we've caught that and we have just about by a whisker, and I could have moved that along, then that'll be absolutely fine. So let's carry on. So number 6 we've done. So number 7 is this line across here. So again, let's get that fabric up, and it's the light green. So let's get that piece of fabric ready. So like I say, I always pop it over the top so I know what it should look like, and then I just flip it over to the back. So you could flip it over. Let's just make sure I had that right. Yep. And you're going to do obviously right sides together. You're flipping it over like that, and your seam line should be under there. Again, just check it. You can pull that back to make sure I mean, look, there's plenty of fabric there. I'm going to pull it back a little bit. Again, you can fold along that line if you think it's going to be useful to you. Certainly in the second technique it is. But as long as you've covered that line, you'll be fine. And as long as you've covered this end and this end, you'll be fine, which I'm happy about. And again, a light box really helps. So if you've got one, it might be the time to get it out. So again, right sides together. Perforated line there so we can fold it. Get our ruler and cut, trim away, leaving us that gorgeous, really neat, isn't it? There's our pattern. This is the line we've stitched. We're folding that back. Again, like I say, you can finger press all of these. That's up to you. Or get a fabric roller. So there's our other little green piece done. So let's flip it round. So number 8 is the medium green. So that's the next piece we're going to put on, and that's the line we're going to stitch. Now I think it's really important I'm showing you every single step of this, because if you're, like I said, if you're anything like me, this does not make any sense to me at all. It may not to you, but I think this is quite a good methodical way. Like I say, the second way might be better. So that's where I want that piece to go, but I want it right sides together. So if I flip that over and pop that there, line that up. Let's get that lined up nicely as best I can. And that's where it's going to go, along there. And like I say, hold on to it, have a little look, get your light box out so you can see, hold it up to a window to make sure you can see it okay. And when you start off stitching, just make sure that it's lined up. I can come in a little bit, make sure it's lined up at the bottom as well. And you can put your needle in there and then just have a little look at the alignment. So let's take it off the page, past the dotted line, and then I'm just looking at all my pieces. I'm really happy that they're all sitting. I don't know if I can show you. So there's my light green that I've just done, and there's my mid green that I'm just about to stitch on top, and they're actually touching each other. Have you ever wondered what the Gold Club is all about? So many people message me, what is the Gold Club? Okay, simply it's my online sewing group, okay, mainly based on Facebook, where we have a bit of a natter every day. We do Facebook Lives and make all sorts of things. But if you go to my website, lizziecurtis.com, you'll see a Join Gold tab on the top there. And all that means is that you click on that and you buy it. So for £5, which in dollars is about $6.30, depending on exchange rates and times, you will get 3 patterns every month. I know, it's mad. If you look at the price of my patterns in the shop, generally they're now $4.99. The value of the Gold Club online membership at this point in time is just £5 a month. So you're getting the 3 free patterns every month, and they're all made by me, designed for you. Easy, moderate, fairly difficult. Then we have the Facebook to back that up all as well, the Facebook group. So we have a wonderful time in there. We're all great friends. So if you want to join a great online sewing community, join Lizzie's Gold Club. So we're stitching the line now between 7 and 8. The next one will be 9, but we've got a perforated line. So just fold that back, tear the paper where you've got any stitches going through, pop it down on your desk, get your 1/4 inch ruler, or a regular ruler is fine. Not when you're all going out buying 1/4 inch rulers or 1/8 inch rulers, just use your regular ruler, fold your pattern back, and here's your lovely little piece of mid green, and then just give it an iron. Lovely. Okay, let's turn that down a wee bit. That iron gets so hot. Okay, let's go back. We need number 9 now, and number 9 I believe is cream. I nearly guessed. I thought no, I better check. Let's have a look. Number 9. Here we go. So again, it's going to look like that, but I want it right size together with my piece. So I'm going to flip it over. Let's get it so it's sitting in the right place. Yep. There it is, it wants to be like that. There we go. So there's the line we just did. Now we're going to stitch between the 8 and 9, that line along there. So I just want to make sure my cream piece is sitting on that line, which it easily is. I may need to adjust it slightly as I put it under the machine. So I'm going to pop the needle in. And I'm just going to line this up underneath. So I'm going to pop my needle in, and I'm just going to twist that over slightly. That's lovely. And then stitch down. Okay, fold your paper back, give it a fold and a crease. Get the ruler. Cut your excess away, and then fold your cream piece back. Now you might think that this is a lot of faffing for a piece of quilting or piece of patchwork, but it really does make a difference. The accuracy involved is incredible, and it truly does make a difference to your finished work. So it is worth having a little go at it. So the next piece we're going to do, so look at the front, we need number 10. Okay, and number 10 is a green piece. So let's find that. Here we go, dark green. So it goes like that on my front of my pattern. So I'm just going to flip it like it's going to be right size together, pop it underneath. Now, of course, if you're using pattern fabric, and I probably would suggest to you use plain when you first do this, but if you're using pattern fabric, please be cautious of if you've got your patterns going on the right side, you know, you're doing right sides together. So let's just zoom across here. So you're stitching between the lines 9 and 10 and 8 as well. So if I show you that. So this was the line we just did for the cream, and this is the line I've just done for the green. So I've just stitched right across that line there between 9 and 10, and obviously the next one is 11. So again, we've done the perforated line, so let's fold that back. Cut. Nice seam allowance there. Fold it back and fold our green over as well. I'll try and speed up a little bit now. Although having said that, you know, I actually think this is something that you don't have to do this super quick, but you don't have to rush. So the next part is the creams, which is number 11. So I want it to look like that. So I'm just going to flip it right sides together and to put it under like that. Okay. I'm just making sure that the fabrics are on top of each other. Flip it over and just make sure I've got plenty of fabric. Yeah. And of course, if your pieces are cut to size, or cut to the shape, then it shouldn't be too difficult for you. So right across to the dashed line. So I've gone all the way along there for number 11. Fold it back. And cut. Okay, fold it flat again. And you will get into this habit of folding and cutting and using your tools really. So give that a press. 2 more pieces to put down now. It's nearly finished. Hurrah! So the next piece we look at is number 12. So again, let's get our piece number 12. So we want it to look like that. So we'll just flip that over to there. Line it up roughly with the pieces that you've already got there. But check, double check again to make sure that it's in the right place. And make sure that you're not overhanging too much, because it would be easy to do that. And then you're stitching between, well, all of those pieces down here, and I'll show you when I've done. So just make sure that it's fitting. And because I'm using a really short stitch, it takes ages to go along. And if my camera is juddering, I apologise. So you can see from the side view there again that we've stitched from this outside edge here all along the number 12 line, but we're covering all of these pieces here. Again, we've perforated, so fold it. Okay, we're just going to tear that paper back because I don't want to tear my stitches. I'm not interested in the paper. The paper is the last thing I'm interested in. Again, fold it flat, finger press that over. And there's the penultimate piece applied. And then the last one is the cream, so we want it to look like that. So sometimes you have to visualize it. We want it to look like that, but we're going to do right sides together, so flip it over. Make sure that you're covering your line, both ends. Start from the dashed line and you're going diagonally right across. Just keep an eye on your seam allowance really. You don't want it any more. If you've cut these pieces ½ inch bigger, you don't want it any more than ½ inch hanging over. Otherwise it may not get to the correct line on the side. So now we've stitched between a 12 and 13, and we've stitched all the way along here from the dashed edge to the dashed line there. Okay, so again, fold that over, and give that a cut. Okay. And don't worry about these pieces hanging over. Please don't worry about any of that. And this is our last piece. So we'll give the piece an iron. Okay. So we have completed our little patch. Doesn't it look gorgeous? Really does. I've used the 3 tones of green there, although that's quite similar, but it is a mid-tone. And I've used the yellow and orange to depict a bird of paradise flower. That's what I wanted to achieve. But you can see it's rather scruffy, and you can see that the back looks like that because we've stitched over all that paper. So now what we're going to do is trim away, and we're going to trim to that dashed line. Okay, we're not going to trim to the solid line. We're trimming to the dashed line. And that will give us a 6.5 inch square ready to be put into, I'm sorry, there is a bin down there, ready to put into a project. Whatever that project is, it might be that you just create this one square and you don't do any more than the one square. And that could go into the centre of a cushion beautifully. Now, if you can hear music, that's because our local ice cream van has just turned up. It's the season! Hurrah! So, let's just pop all those bits. I've got an Ava here, look, you can see, full of bits. Okay, so there we have trimmed that back to size. Can you see what that looks like? And there. And do you remember that little tiny bit? And I said, not sure. I reckon we're going to get about 1/8 of an inch of that fabric in. So I'm more than happy with that. And that's what it looks like. So trim back, doesn't it look amazing? But of course, all of these pieces of paper on the back need to come away. Now, you can do 2 things. You can rip all that paper out now, or you can wait until you stitch them together, because you've got a seam allowance all the way around, so it kind of visually helps you if you're not really good with straight stitching. So you can keep that paper in until you're ready to put it into a project, and then rip the paper out once it's got the borders on, or another piece, whatever you decide. But it just rips away. It just literally rips away because you've perforated each piece with a small stitch. So it all just beautifully comes away, and actually it's quite a nice thing to do. So just be careful of those edges. All these edges where you've stitched, I've said to you to go up to the dash line. By all means, you could do a back stitch there just to make your lines a little bit more secure, your lines of stitching. I'll leave that for you to decide what you want to do. Back stitch is good because it's stronger. But equally, if you've gone up to the dashed line, then that's just as strong as well. And if you do pull a couple of stitches out, it's not going to harm it too much. But what I do is I hold on to the seam and then I pull the paper. So I've got a firm thumb and finger, if you like, on the outside edge. And like I said, because all these pieces are perforated, they come out really well, and you can see now why you would have to print a pattern piece for each individual square. It's not me being frivolous, because we can't use them. We just absolutely can't use them again. And if there's a few little bits of pieces of paper left in, then leave them in, because if the project gets washed at any time, they're just going to sort of melt away, aren't they, in the wash? So I wouldn't worry too much. So that's not too bad. That's not too bad. There, so you can see on the back a few little bits and pieces. But look at that. Look how crisp that looks. Look how accurate that looks. And it didn't take too long, although obviously I slowed it right down. More for my benefit than yours. So that's one way. Now I've done a little bit of the next block because I didn't want to take up too much time with repeating myself like I did with this. Okay, so let's just pop that to one side. So the second technique, okay, so we're going to make this, so it's exactly the same pattern. I've just changed the colours. I'm using patterned fabrics, as you can see, which makes it quite interesting to make sure you've got your right sides together. And we're going to do a slightly different technique here. So I'll pop that down because I've got 3 of those made. And if I get the bits and pieces you need here on my desk, I've got lots of green bits on here now. I should have made sure that they weren't muddled up. Let's see, there we go. Right, here we go. So I've created some of it already. You'll be pleased to know. So you need a card. Now I've got one of my daughter's postcards here, which is the quality of the card is just right. It's not too thick, not too thin. A credit card isn't too bad, but it is quite thick. So something in between, a sort of a 250 GSM cardstock, if you know what that looks like, that's the sort of weight. But it's quite stiff, but not too thick. That's what you need. You also need to obviously have printed out your pattern again, and obviously I've got some of it already pre-made. And this time we're going to just literally use scraps. So anything that I've cut up here, ready to go. And obviously just to save a little bit of my desk space, I have got them, I think, cut to the right size. We'll see. So with this technique, it's a slightly different to the last one, because what we do first of all is we actually fold on the lines before we do anything else. So let's do this step by step. Again, you need a map. So I haven't got mine handy, but you need the map so you know exactly what colours go in next. So with this one, we've got the cream there, which is 6. We want 7. And when I look at my piece here, it's actually the spotty fabric. So it's my spotty fabric. So again, we'll go to the side camera so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So this is the piece I now want to put in, number 7. You can see on the back, these are the pieces already done. And now this time we're going to fold this line here. So we're going to put our card against that line. So here's my postcard. Here it is. And I'm just going to do this in mid-air, then do it on my desk. So you're putting that card against that line. And then if I keep it there, okay, hopefully you can see, and you can see exactly what I'm doing. You're going to fold this paper over the top of the postcard on that line, okay? So I'm going to have to turn it so it's better for me. So get the postcard or whatever you're going to use on that line. A greetings card would be useful. Fold your paper over, okay? Fold your paper over. So inside there is the card. You can take that out if you want to, but it's thin enough for me to keep that in there. And then you need your 1/4" ruler or your 1/8 of an inch ruler, whatever you decide. And now you see we can trim this seam, okay? We can trim this seam so it's all beautiful. And we want to put the piece of fabric underneath that we want to go on for number 7, okay? So our number 7 piece is here. So it's the spotty one. This is the spotty, and we want it so it's right sides together, but overhanging by at least that 1/4 of an inch. Okay. So if I fold it that way, or turn it that way, put this right sides together. Ideally, you'll have a straight edge that you can just line that up to. Okay, and then flip it over, and you'll be able to see that you've got those fabrics. You can just about see the spotty. I've done that deliberately. You can see that those fabrics go all the way along there. And again, you can check to make sure that you're covering that number 7. I know I am, but again, you could use a light box. So then you can trim that to size if you want to. So again, we could get our ruler in, we can trim it. But you know what, if you're in the habit of moving stuff, for instance, I'm going to keep my hand on there, keep it all in my hand. But if you think you might wriggle that as you lift it up, pop a pin in there to make sure it doesn't move, but also perhaps don't cut it until you're ready. Again, we're stitching from the front, so I'm stitching across the line, just making sure my fabrics are lined up. And we're stitching all the way across, just like we did before. Okay, now mine is already perfectly cut, so there's no need for me to use that perforated edge to cut because we've already trimmed that all away. But of course, what you need to do is to get your iron or your fabric roller, or your seam roll, I should say, in there to just to flatten that seam a little bit. Okay, it's not crucial, but it's nice. So there's our number 7, and you can see there's a lot of fabric there. So where you thought the other technique maybe was wasteful, maybe you'll think this is more wasteful. So there's our number 7 placed in there, but now we want to stitch across this line here between number 7 and number 8. And I know that piece is actually this piece of fabric, which is enormous, so I'll have to cut some of that down. But again, we're going to fold along that edge. So where before we waited until it was perforated, this time we used the card to pop in there, pop right up to the line there, and fold it over. So I'll do it, and then what I'll do is I'll show you I'll bring it round so you can see. So I'll bring it back a bit. There we go. So there's my card, and my card is placed exactly on that line between 7 and 8. And I've folded that over, and you can see how much fabric I've got to cut away. Tons. But I'm going to cut it because that's what we must do. And like I said before, if you want to line up the next piece of fabric underneath and trim that back, which is what we'll do, then by all means do that. So you could, if you wanted to, take this great big piece of fabric and stitch it. There's no reason why you shouldn't, but it's a little bit wasteful. So I'll get my scissors and we'll trim some of that away. But look at the pattern and just make sure you're cutting enough, or better be over cautious than under. So that's the piece of fabric that's going to go in there. So let's take the the postcard away, turn that over, right sides together. I'm just going to marry my 2 pieces up together. Okay, and if you've got a straight edge, you can put it straight edge to straight edge, so it's perfect. Or I'm just going to shift it slightly. I'm going to turn it back. I'm going to trim it again, just to make sure it's super neat. And then I'm going to grab hold of those layers and stitch that all at the same time. So I'm flipping that over. Again, I'm just stitching from the dash line across. So I'm stitching the line between 7 and 8. So I've stitched across here. I know that my fabrics are already trimmed, so they all look beautiful. It's just a case of pressing that back. And look, this could have been a little bit better up the top there. So just watch out for your fabric and make sure it meets. I think we'll be fine. But I would rather have that hanging over than not, absolutely. But I think once we've cut this away and trimmed, so do you see where that's where the stitching starts here? Well, I know that I've covered that. It's just a little, probably 1/8 of an inch, but I know I've covered it, so it's fine. So there's our number 8. So now we need number 9, and number 9 is the cream. So let's pop these pieces away again. And again, we're going to do the same. So we're going to fold along that 8 and 9 line with our postcard. So put the postcard down, or whatever. Well, it could be a credit card, like I say. You're going to fold along that edge. You can leave your postcard there if you want to, whatever you're using. Got a little stitch there that's making that fabric sit up a little bit. And then trim away. So now our piece of fabric is beautifully trimmed, and we're going to flip it back. And what we're going to do, well, sorry, I'm going to keep it there, but what we need is that piece there, which is the cream. So again, I've got a nice little square of cream fabric here. So I'm just going to pop that over the top, but I want to make sure that that covers, because this is a triangle. I want to make sure that covers. So again, it's just a case of making sure that it goes up to the seam far enough, but also comes down here far enough as well. So what we're going to do is put those 2 fabrics together. You can see they're right sides together. Flip that over and stitch along that line between 8 and 9. stitched along there. I know that I've got a perfectly good cut piece there. All I need to do is flip that over and give that a press. There we go. So the next piece we want is number 10, and number 10 is the green. So this is our green here. So again, we're going to put our postcard on that line going over there. So it's between the 9 and the 10, but it's covering the number 8 as well. So fold that back on that line. It really helps having that card there. Get my cutter in. Let's just trim that a little bit as well. Okay, so there's our trimmed seam. So what I can do with this, right sides together and pop that along that seam. Open up your fabric, take your postcard out, open up your fabric, pin it by all means and stitch across that line there. And I'm going to go from the dash line. So you can see how you're going to get into a routine with this. It's a really lovely technique once you get that methodical way of working in your head. So because I've already trimmed that seam away, I know that that's very accurate. Obviously this isn't, but it will get trimmed away eventually. So I'm just going to bring the paper up there. I'm going to give it a press. Lovely. So the next one is the cream, and the cream actually, if I turn that around, you can see the cream one goes here. You can see I've got plenty of fabric there and it'll all get cut away. So again, I'm just putting my card onto that number 11 line. So this is the line between 10 and 11, folding that paper over my pattern piece, just ripping the paper if there's stitches going across. I'm more interested in the stitches than the paper, so tear the paper. So then you can take your ruler and cut that away. You can just about see what I'm doing there. So you might say this is more wasteful than the other technique. You really have to decide what's more comfortable for you. So there's our cut line there. I'll show you that side. You can see that's overhanging by 1/4 inch. So the next piece we're going to put in is cream. So that's right sides together. And I'm putting it along that line there. Let me show you. Okay, and if we look at it that way, I've already got that 1/4 inch trimmed, so I'm going to follow that 1/4 inch and keep them nice and neat. If you didn't have a straight edge or a straight-ish edge like that, then either trim it back or you can stitch and then trim again, like I did before. So let's just make sure this is going to fit okay. Yes, I'm pretty sure that is. So I just cut scraps ready for this, so I didn't kind of measure anything, because that's what we would do at home, wouldn't it? So let's just get those pieces lined up. And I think I can understand why some people use an 1/8 inch ruler, because I'm not going to trim that, that's fine, because there's less sort of bulky seams underneath all of this, and actually I think it makes quite a good job. So there's our cream piece put on. You can see that it's quite massive, so I'm going to trim that away so it looks a little bit better visually, but when you're doing it you don't need to do this. Let's just trim that like that, and that green bit is so big I'm going to trim that away. There we go. But like I say, you will be using scraps, so there's our green and our cream. And so we've only got 2 more pieces to put down. So if we have a look at it here, we've got the number 12 to put down and the number 13. The 12 is green, the 13 is cream. So let's go ahead and do that. So it's again the same technique. You're folding between the 12 piece and all of these pieces. So you're folding along this long line here. So you're trimming away So there's our beautiful 1/4 inch that we've trimmed away. And we're going to put our green over the top. And I'm going to do it so you can see it's sticking out either end. So it matches the 1/4 inch. Fold my paper back over. I really want you to have a go at this, because like I said, this is my nemesis. If I had something that I would avoid, this is it. But actually I've thoroughly enjoyed doing these little projects, because it's made me slow down. It's made me think about you guys and what you would like to do, not what I want to do. And now for the project, I made a cushion up, and you can see now why I'm not going to do the cushion in this hour. I can talk you through it, but I'm not going to make it because first of all, we've made cushions up before. In the pattern, you have all the instructions to make the cushion up, so don't think I have totally forgotten you. And it would be a 2-hour video, which we don't want. So now I'm folding over the diagonal between the 12 and 13 using my card. So I'm folding it back, creasing, getting my ruler, cutting. And to be honest, all these pieces you might want to use in other projects, so do save them, I'm sure you do. So again, right sides together, just placing that over the top. Folding my paper back and stitching. Just make sure your pieces are all lined up, and you're just stitching along that diagonal line. So there we are. So there's that last little piece there. So again, we'll just get the iron in. And that's that last piece stitched on there. So now I'm just going to trim around my square, my block. So we're cutting on the dashed lines. And of course, if you have a different way of doing foundation paper piecing, by all means share it with everybody and let everybody know how you do it. Because I don't want anybody to be anxious or frightened about it, even though it looks really strange. But the accuracy that you can get with foundation paper piecing is second to none. It truly is. So it's worth having a go. Right, so there's our piece. There we are. Now doesn't it look better? Always looks better with a trim. So again, you've got the paper on the back, so all that needs tearing away. Again, be very careful how you tear it. You don't want to rip it. You don't want to rip the stitches. Don't worry about the paper. And just strip it all away, and then you have these lovely, you can see these lovely pieces, and look at the accuracy of those 1/4 inch seams. They're absolutely super, and you've got some really lovely pieces to put together to make a cushion or make a quilt, or just put that in the center of something. You could make a table runner and sort of alternate them, so you can have them sort of going like this. Let's see if I can hold them up. Don't they look pretty? You could have sashing in between, don't have to have anything in between, but they'll make a really, really pretty project. So let me bring Marcy up, because she is the star of the show, not me. And you can see, oh my goodness me, so bright and so cheerful with those plain colours, with the binding around the outside, so you're putting wrong sides together, so you're making an envelope back. I've covered that before, but please look back on videos if you want to see that, me actually doing that. But the pattern talks you through the whole thing to make this cushion up, so you're not sort of left in the lurch. And you can see by using the same colours as the actual flowers, it really brings it to life. It really pops it. I think it looks very, very Caribbean, don't you think? Hot, sultry weather, gorgeous. Yeah, I can't help but look at it and admire it, not because it's my work, but because of the colours involved. And my daughter actually created the pattern. My daughter Adrienne created the pattern. So I'm very grateful to her for that because I think it looks awesome. So there we are. So there's Marcy. And she's available as a download on my website, lizziecurtis.com. And also, if you're part of the Gold Online Sewing Group, she is one of this month's patterns for March 2021. So lucky you if you got it first, because I think you're going to enjoy making this. Forgive me if I've looked clumsy making this. Like I said, it isn't something I'm very comfortable with, but I'm certainly very happy with the outcome. I love this cushion so much, brings me joy. So there we are. So there's Marcy. Please go to the website, download it, and I hope you make loads.